Just very briefly, as you know, when we talk about surveillance, and we are right now talking about not just surveillance, we are going beyond surveillance. We are talking about, you're talking about surveillance, you are talking about data mining, you are talking about planting evidence. These are the three things. One, Pegasus, of course, we talk about surveillance and data mining. Uh, but like we saw in the Bhima Koregaon case, it also reached the stage of planting of evidence. So
Yes.
what is happening now is, if you look historically, for instance, the surveillance networks or surveillance of people, which was obviously always going on historically, but initially when there were no telephones, there were no computers, there were no smartphones or any kind of phones. You had surveillance, which is essentially physical surveillance of individuals, by following them, going to their house, talking to friends, stalking them, etc., etc. That was a kind of surveillance which used to go on. And then you had telegraph system started, and the first law which came was way back in 18 and 18 1990, sorry, 1890s, the Indian Telegraph Act, which permitted the central government and the state governments to intercept in certain cases of public emergency and uh, safety, public safety kind of things. After that, of course, after the constitution, there was all a debate. There was always a debate about whether right to privacy is a fundamental right, not a fundamental right, etc., etc., and various, all kinds of judgments came in. Initially, saying that domiciliary visits are not legal, not constitutional. At the same time, stalking a person is constitutional because you're not interfering with his day-to-day work. Not talking to that person's friend is legal because you're not interfering with that person's daily life. That was those kind of judgments came from Supreme Court, and finally it led to this. Initially it led to the PUCL judgment in 90s, 96, I believe, where there were directions issued as to how and under what conditions you can, tap the telephones of people. So telephone tapping was allowed under the Indian Telegraph Act, but there were certain conditions put under the by the judgment, and now that has been through the rules. After that, you have the Information Technology Act of 2000. Okay. Uh, and which also provides, as it was mentioned earlier, which also provides for certain kinds of restrictions on interceptions, on data mining, etc., etc. Various kinds of restrictions provided there. And then you have the famous privacy judgment. Because ultimately, surveillance, the challenge to surveillance of any kind, is essentially on the basis of right to privacy. And you have a fundamental right to privacy determined only now in the last decade, okay, where again the Supreme Court very categorically talks about three kinds of privacy arguments. One is the bodily integrity. Second is, of course,
Right.
informational autonomy, which is very important.
Yeah.
And third is individual decision making. So, in life, what is most important right now is that in the present government, in the last 6, 7, 8 years, especially, not that it wasn't happening earlier, but more so in the last 6, 7, 8 years, the surveillance of all kinds, and illegal surveillance, completely illegal. Though the law provides that certain kind of situations you can do surveillance, law does not allow data mining. Law does not allow planting of evidence.
Yeah.
Now, that has happened in Bhima Koregaon case. What happened? Bhima Koregaon case, people's computers were hacked through a malware, and actual documents were planted. And those planted documents are the only documents shown as evidence against these people who are in jail for 3 years. So the point which I am trying to say is that now we are get a Pegasus, NetWire, etc., etc. These are the various kinds of malwares. Now the situation is becoming so drastic that nobody knows whether their phones are hacked or not. I don't know whether on my computer something is planted or not. Okay. And the planting happens, especially in Bhima Koregaon, it happened over a period of 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So it's a very systematic plan. It's not a mistake committed by someone or somebody playing a mischief of trying to putting some virus into your computer. It's not that. It's much more than that. Then you come to data mining, which is even worse, in the sense that you actually find out all the data from the person's computer, all the data from that person's phone, and then planting of evidence. So I think we are in for really bad times, and the law which is there today, like you have a data protection bill, which is anyway a very very weak bill,
Weak.
which is pending in the parliament. It is not moved. You have Evidence Act, Indian Evidence Act, which hasn't moved adequately with the changing technology. So how do you prove that a particular electronic document is valid, not valid? Is something which everybody is fishing in the dark. That's the kind of situation we are in.